It's nice to be here with you all. And so why don't we just all take a moment and give ourselves permission just to go inward, to breathe, to feel, to experience the fullness of what you are. Or just to arrive here fully, without any agenda, without any figuring anything out. But can you give yourself permission to take some long inhales, some long exhales? And just feel the aliveness of your being right here, right now. Just noticing what it feels like to be you. What is your presence like? What is your being like? Truly. So sometimes within our human self, we have pain or sadness or grief or just lots of thoughts, lots of excitement. Dawn was saying a couple minutes ago her head was hurting, and so just feel that, whatever it is you're feeling. And then I invite you to notice the noticer, notice the witness, notice awareness. Or can you stop and simply turn awareness upon itself? Turn awareness upon itself and see, who is it that's here? That's noticing. Who is it that's here that's feeling? Who is it that's here that's witnessing the thoughts, the feelings? Like, who is that? That's awake, that's alive, and that's already free. Who is that? Who is that? Who is it that's here? That is quiet, spacious, radiant love. Radiant love. And so, I encourage you to be here fully with your experience. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here, truly, deeply. Welcome, welcome. And so tonight I thought I'd speak a little bit about self-compassion, self-love, self-respect. Now, to know oneself is to know that you are God, that you are worthy of your own worship, that you're worthy of your own worship. You're worthy of your gentle, loving attention. What you are is worthy of this. And both your highest divine nature as well as your human self. Your human self. So I had a number of questions come forward today and or this last week, and I thought I would speak to some of them. And of course, if anyone here has a question, you're welcome to type it in the chat. You're also welcome to ask for the microphone if you're on the Zoom room. But a couple things came forward. I have a friend who lives in Israel, and she wrote this letter. Craig, I think a big thing that has gotten me stuck and divided and fragmented is the difference between the teachings that say awakening is the beginning of personal growth and those teachings that say it is the end of personal growth. And so some teachers teach that spiritual awakening is the end of personal growth. Some say it's the beginning of personal growth. And she goes on to write, I've gone back and forth between the two perspectives. And the latter perspective, that it's the end of personal growth, has proven to be disempowering, depersonalizing, life-sucking, deadening, etc. And, it's something I would agree with. Now, I would say in defense of a teaching that says that awakening is the end of personal growth. When we study a teaching like this, it's inviting us to wake up here and now, directly to your innate perfection, right here, right now. And if you give yourself permission to completely divorce yourself from your human self, there's a good chance, if you allow yourself to be deeply vulnerable, that you will wake up and out of your human self and you'll feel great freedom. But it's a freedom that's experienced temporarily. Because if we divorce ourselves from anything completely, if we divide ourselves, well, that's not really what the enlightened mind is about. It's not about division. The enlightened mind is about unity. And so there's all kinds of tricks we can do in the spiritual world. We can say prayers intensely and open up to a divine realm where we just feel incredible, where we feel like an angelic presence. We can chant our mantra 10,000 times. Hell, I've even done, yoga for hours and hours, over the course of a day or a weekend. And at the end of the weekend, I feel like I'm just floating on a cloud of absolute bliss. Or we can go to a guru and get a blast of Shaktipat or whatever it is. There's all kinds of powerful experiences on the path. But what I've always been interested in is, what does it mean to be awake here on planet Earth? What does it mean to be awake in my human self? What does it mean to be awake throughout creation, not just in my absolute self, but in my human self as well? And any teaching that teaches in a way that's divisive is not the truth. The truth is not divisive. Now, divisive truth creates relative truths in a very limited way of being. In a very limited way of being. I could look at you all and say, you are all absolutely and totally God, totally divine. And that's true. It's absolutely true. When I'm specifically speaking about your absolute nature. Your absolute nature. But have you realized this fully and totally throughout the extent of your being? That's the great question. If we have not answered this, if we've not come to peace with our human self, eventually we'll feel depressed, we'll feel sad, we'll feel anxious, we will feel like we are missing something. If our spiritual awakening does not touch our human self, you will feel as if you're missing something. Because there's an aspect of self, there's an aspect of being, there's an aspect of your consciousness which is untouched by the awakening. And we all want an awakening that's total, that's complete. In order to have an awakening that's total and complete, we must have a worldview, a perspective that is total and complete. We can't say that I am awake and everyone else is asleep. That's a highly divisive way of thinking. It breaks the world into parts, creates utter division. I am awake and everyone else is a fool. That creates incredible division. I'm a Christian. I'm the one who's saved. I'm going to go to salvation, but everyone else isn't. These types of teachings are not the total truth. Now, we may be saved by Jesus. We may be going to heaven. But it doesn't mean that our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Buddhist brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters are not also going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is made for all of us. All of us. Those who are asleep and those who are awake. And if you don't believe me, I'll see you on the other side. I'll see you on the other side. And so, in the question that came forward, she writes that I've gone back and forth between these two perspectives. And so anytime we're going back and forth between two perspectives, we are surely in our egoic nature. Our egoic nature lives in back and forth thinking. It's either this way or that way. It's black or it's white. It's good, it's bad. It's right, it's wrong. It's dualistic. True non-duality includes all. It's not just about waking up and out. It's not just about going down and in. True non-duality embraces everything. It's non-dual. It's beyond the pairs of opposite and includes the pairs of opposites and the 10,000 things, and it's intimate with all of life and everything in between and all the realms of existence and being. It's inclusive. And so if you study a teaching that is disempowering, depersonalizing, life-sucking, and deadening, trust your gut. It's probably not a teaching for you. For you. Now, sometimes a teaching that's, that is the neti path can help you gather up your spiritual power temporarily. It can help you to awaken to some things temporarily. But eventually, if you want to have a full awakening, a full experience, your experience must include all of life. All of life. And I think, your gut is telling you this. It's the back and forth, this way or that way. True spiritual awakening, like the mind of an enlightened one, thinks more in terms of both and. Both and. Beyond, neither, and both and. It includes every perspective. It's not limited. In fact, it's even beyond perspective, which is a whole other way of being. Beyond the experience of experience. And I'm not going to go too much into that because that gets very confusing for most individuals. Okay. Here's a question from Rhonda. Craig, can you speak about spiritual exhaustion? Have you ever needed to take a break from the striving? Yeah, that's a great question. If you're feeling exhausted spiritually, like you're striving and striving and striving, oftentimes that type of exhaustion, comes from egoic grasping. Now, if you take that down a notch and bring it into a sense of balance, then we start to step into the divine quality of discipline. It's good to be disciplined on the path. It's good to know who you are and what your life is about. But oftentimes our ego, it chases after things because it's in a lot of pain. And it just wants relief. That's why people strive so intensely, because they want relief. They want great relief. And one of the things we can do is give ourselves permission. If we're feeling exhausted, can you give yourself permission to lay down? Open your heart and receive the peace that's right here. Receive the spiritual abundance, the grace of God. Let yourself be held. Let yourself be loved this moment. For me, I was like a ridiculous meditator on the path. Some days I would meditate for, 5 hours, 6 hours. I wouldn't miss a single day of meditation. And I would read, piles of spiritual books. And sometimes in my meditation, my striving looked like this. I would fall asleep because I would meditate too long, and I'd do that nodding thing. When you're a spiritual teacher, it gets a little painful because you have to look out at the audience. And when guiding a meditation, you'll see a number of your friends in the room who are doing the nodding game. What's really funny is sometimes on retreat, if you see the teacher doing the nodding game. And so for me, sometimes I would be nodding because I'd be striving too much. I'd be trying too hard. And so the Buddha talked about grasping. This is the energy of grasping. So the opposite of grasping is just having your hands open and receiving. And one of the great ways we can receive if we're feeling exhausted is with a practice like yoga nidra, where you just lay down in corpse pose and you relax and you just open and you receive. You're held by the yoga mat, you're held by the floor, you're held by the earth. If you're out in the grass, you're held by the grass. You're held by the sun and the hugeness of the sky. If you ever walk in the forest, you're held by the forest. By the forest. And it's nurturing. So when your body feels exhausted, it's a great form of self-compassion to have mindfulness of this and notice, I'm feeling exhausted. What do I need? I need to be nurtured. I need to give myself a spa day. And a spa day on the spiritual path, doesn't always look like a bubble bath with, scented candles or a massage. A spa day on the spiritual path may mean we just walk down to the beach and give ourselves permission to think about nothing. Give ourselves permission to be no one. Do nothing, be nobody. And just lay there and receive. And receive. Receive the love of God. Receive the vitality of life. Receive the hugeness of the sky. And let your consciousness melt without any doing. Any doing. And so yes, that's a beautiful question. I just want to give a shout out to my friend Tony. Hi Tony, happy birthday, my friend. Much love to you. Much love to you. Good to see you. Okay, here's another question. Okay, this is from Brett here. Hi, Craig. I'm building a website this week because I'm ready to share my gifts of counsel and of music from my heart. So many years I've lived with a subconscious belief that is wrong for me to have a sense of significance. Brett, you are a child of the Most High. You are a divine being, my friend. You have beautiful gifts within you. It's your job, your responsibility to share your gifts. To share your gifts. Of course you have significance. You're divine, my friend. And so all of us here on planet Earth, we have gifts. We are significant. All of us. And I encourage each and every one of you. Again, this is a tremendous act of love to be able to look inside and say, what is it that's good about me? Brett, you have a gift for music. That's a gift I don't have. I wish I had the gift of music, but I don't, I've actually been silenced before in different singing groups, where people said, hey, your voice is a little too raspy. But you, my friend, have the gift of music. And so then you have the responsibility, the obligation to share your gift. Share your gift with the world. This is why God made us. She made us and she wants to put us to work. One of the things, it's funny, someone else wrote me a long list of questions about on this topic of unworthiness. And, it's interesting. One of my teachers said to me once that unworthiness is a supreme form of arrogance. The reason being is because we are divine beings and we are looking at God, who is our Father, our Creator, our Mother, our Creator. And we are standing outside of God saying, I am not divine, I am not worthy, I am no good. I have nothing to share, nothing to offer, nothing to do. I'm going to completely ignore my divinity, my significance. It's one of the greatest acts of violence we can do to ourselves and actually to creation, is to deny our significance. And of course, the significance of others. And, Brett, I can say this because, I personally struggled with this feeling of lack of significance. I had tremendous trouble speaking up or sharing. I felt so embarrassed, and I continually apologized for my existence. Some of my friends even still tell me, Craig, quit apologizing for for taking up too much space. And be yourself. Share your gift. Share your gift with the world. Share your truth. So much of the world, they don't see us, they don't know us, they don't love us. They're lost in their own pain and their own confusion. And so they transmit an energy to us that says, you are not significant. You're not. Or we have, warped views of what it means to be significant. There's people on Instagram and they have 2 million followers, and a lot of people think that means that they are more significant than others. That they're more significant than others. Out here in the West where I live in a place that has many incredible, just natural, I don't even know what you call them, natural, beautiful landmarks, We have incredible mountains and canyons and rivers and forest and snow, snow-capped mountains and this and that. And we're having this problem out here where, Instagram people are coming out to these landmarks where in national parks where in the past they weren't very popular at all. And some person might take a selfie, say, for example, at a Horseshoe Bend over in Arizona. It's just this place where the Colorado River makes a big horseshoe type bend. And I went out there a few years back, and there's just a couple people out there. There's a dirt road, and way out in the middle of nowhere, 4 or 5 hours from a city. And the park ranger said only 4,000 people, visit this spot a year. And then a couple of Instagram people came and started posting pictures of it, and then more and more came. And now the park, this little park, sees 2,200,000 people a year. So it went from 4,000 people a year to 2,200,000 people a year. And of course, the park can't keep up with all the rubbish, the trash, the sewage, the traffic. It's gotten crazy. Some people are probably falling off the cliff, to their death, unfortunately, because there's this huge cliff overlooking the Colorado River. And, some people think to be significant means you have lots of followers, that you have, 8,000 followers on Instagram or 800 likes on Facebook or whatever it is on YouTube. You are significant because you are a child of the Most High. You are made in the image and likeness of God. If any of you right now stop and close your eyes and begin to go inward and feel your divinity, you'll see that there is something beyond significant here. Something ridiculously holy and divine. Something absolutely pure. Pure. My teacher used to say, despite yourself, Craig, despite yourself, you're divine. And what he meant by that is despite your big fat ego. And so he liked to honor both. Because sometimes we can have the flip side of arrogance where we think, we're the greatest because we've realized our divinity. And then we take on like that guru archetype, where we think everyone should worship the ground we walk upon. When you truly wake up to your significance, you see that all of life is radically significant. All of life is divine and is holy. From the lowest aspects of our being to the highest. To dogs in the streets, to eagles in the sky. Everything is utterly divine. Utterly divine. And so, this fella writes, Craig, I can see myself fluctuate between feeling good about myself at times and other times feeling bad about myself, where I'm more stuck in negative and past experiences and ideas and feel a sense of unworthiness and shame around those. I've been trying to love myself as best as I can when I do not feel lovable, using affirmations, meditations, usually just laying down with a mantra you gave me in a recent session. In a deeper way, I guess this unworthiness can be seen as a sense of self-hate. I experienced this during my Vipassana retreat, where I could observe how my mind grabbed the negative memories and created a very self-critical story around them, creating reason to hate myself. And so when our mind gets a little crazy, and starts to turn hatred upon ourselves, turn judgment upon ourselves. Oftentimes it's because there's something within us that's in incredible pain. And so I invite you, my friend, to find that inner critic, to bring him forward, to look him directly in the eyes, and just ask him, what do you need? How can I help you? What do you need? How can I help you? And if you listen to his first need, and the first need of the critic is often something like, I need to be perfect, I need to be better, I need to have 10 million followers on Instagram. But then if you ask, what do you really need? Oftentimes that critic will say, I need to be loved. I need to feel safe. I need to relax. And so then I invite you to invoke that energy of love, the energy of relaxation, the energy of safety, and hold that aspect to yourself. Hold the unworthiness and love it to death. If anyone truly wants to experience no self, which is different than the transcendent self, love your ego to death. And what you'll find is the ego will begin to heal, transform, that any of its negative qualities will begin to transform to divine qualities. When you love the critic to death, what you're left with is discernment and unconditional love. That's a pretty good payoff. These are also qualities of the awakened mind, awakened vision. Now, the same is true with like that first question. When you love the divided mind, love it from a place of unity, bring it into a place of wholeness, you're left with wholeness and the lack of division. The lack of division. When you see the pain, the struggle of either or thinking, black and white thinking, this or that, this or that, this and that, and choose to include both and. Are the Democrats right or the Republicans right? Or the Libertarians? Or the Green Party? Or this party or that party? What if we embrace the truth of them all, found the goodness in them all, and let go of the fundamentalism in them all? Let go of the fundamentalism in them all. What are we left with then? What are the values then? And so, let's see, he goes on and on with his question here. He wrote, Craig, but isn't there also a space beyond both worthiness and unworthiness? You know, this is a teaching from Adyashanti, and I agree that there is a space beyond unworthiness, beyond worthiness and unworthiness. This is true. But you don't get to that space if you know yourself, if you experience yourself as unworthy. If you have unworthiness within you, that is an incredible spiritual impediment. When Adyashanti is speaking about worthiness in this example, you know, this teaching, that there is a space beyond both worthiness and unworthiness, he really means there's a space beyond entitlement and unworthiness. When you are truly worthy, you become empowered. You know who and what you are. To know thyself is to experience your innate worthiness. And you automatically have healthy self-esteem when you know you're divine, when you know there's something good within your heart, when you listen to the truth in your heart. When we're entitled, that's a little bit different. When we're entitled, we just think we're the best and everyone else is lesser than us, lower than us, mere peons or whatever it is that people say. And so I don't like the way Ajahn says this, that there is a space beyond worthiness and unworthiness, because what he means is there's a space beyond entitlement and unworthiness. When you know who and what you are, you fall in love with oneself. And you fall in love with creation because you see that you and life are one. You and life are one. And it's divine, it's holy, it's radically exquisite and completely ordinary, and yet absolutely extraordinary. It's this great paradox. It's a great paradox. And so, my friend, the path forward, if you struggle with unworthiness, is self-love. If you're experiencing entitlement, the path forward is a path of humility, which is also a form of self-love. It's loving oneself enough to let go of the big, overly inflated ego. And as you do that, as you step into humility, you begin to feel more spacious, begin to feel free, open, relaxed, and unified with all of life. All of life. Okay, beautiful. Let me I'll see what else is going on here. Craig, will you talk about how in your process this seeker energy fell away? Gradually, all at once, both? How does it feel to experience yourself without this energy driving you forward? What is your experience of functioning as a human being without it? Yeah, that's a great question, Richard. One of the things that I found over the years is that every egoic quality is simply a lesser form of a divine quality. And by lesser form, I mean it's just an unevolved aspect of a divine quality of consciousness. Like I was speaking about before, when we have a strong critic within us, the critic is just an unevolved form of the divine quality of discernment. Anger is an unevolved form of our own power, our voice, or like what the Buddha called swift, decisive action. And so seeking, if you feel into the energy of seeking, there's something within us, oftentimes that wants to be free of pain. Be free of pain, that's trying to outrun pain. And if we look at the divine quality of outrunning pain, it's resting in being, resting in your truth, and relaxing in what's here right now, opening one's eyes. But the energy of seeking, it actually points us in the direction of truth. If we don't have the energy of seeking, we might just all be hanging out right now, eating a big pizza and drinking a bunch of beers, just screwing around here on planet Earth. I just went back to Cincinnati, Ohio, where my mother lives. And I took my daughter and my wife out to lunch. And I was just feeling into the consciousness of, say the Midwest. And I don't mean this in an offensive way. I grew up in the Midwest and a lot of good times there, but I just saw so many confused individuals just walking around, individuals who were 300, 400 pounds, literally, morbidly obese, just lost in whatever their consciousness was. I can remember this image just stuck into my mind. I was taking my daughter to get a little bit of sushi. Trying to get her to eat is what I was trying to do. I was driving across this parking lot, and in the parking lot, I saw, there was a vape shop, and then there was like the all-you-can-eat buffet, and there was a Waffle House, and like a Church's Fried Chicken or whatever it was. And I saw this guy get out of a car, and he was wearing all black. He had long, just like crazy heavy metal hair. He had a big, like magician kind of top hat on. And he was just standing there, just like staring at the Waffle House. And it was almost like you could see him drooling, just like getting excited to eat some waffles, in the middle of the day. And, I was just looking at this fellow. I thought, boy, I wonder what his consciousness is like. And I just fell into it. And, I experienced heavy metal music and waffles, the desire for waffles. And, it was just silly. It's just silly. It's one of the things that I do is I like, sometimes I'll just feel into the consciousness of others and just see where people are at. It's one of my psychic abilities I have. And, sometimes I like to see what my brothers and sisters are feeling and experiencing. Eventually, though, we drove on from that, that bizarre moment that stuck in my consciousness. And, we arrived at the sushi restaurant, and, that same fellow could have been looking at us saying, who are these silly people eating sushi? Who wants to eat sushi? But anyways, we sat down in the sushi restaurant, and there was a girl who sat kind of across from me. So across from me was my daughter and my wife, but then behind my daughter was this girl. She sat for 45 minutes just speaking about some fantasy world, like a science fiction world, planet Qui-Gon with all the different characters. And she was just telling her boyfriend about this. She was completely lost in her story of this fictional planet, this thing that doesn't even exist. In Zen, we'd call this non-reality. And I was just amazed how she just kept going on and on. And I noticed her consciousness. She wasn't even here at all. She wasn't in her body at all. She was just lost in whatever science fiction fantasy she was reading. And so the energy of seeking, it's an incredible energy. It helps your ego gather up all those parts of yourself that would just want to be drinking beer and eating waffles right now, or whatever it is that people do, watching football all day, or getting spaced out on Instagram, or online shopping, or whatever addiction people are into. See, the energy of seeking helps you gather up all your energy and point it in a direction. As you surrender into seeking and begin to let go into it, what happens is the egoic seeking, which is fueled oftentimes by wanting to escape this world, that begins to dissolve as you embrace more and more of your life, more and more of your experience, more and more of the world. And then the energy of seeking is replaced with the energy of divine will. And so there's this old Christian teaching, I guess it's a teaching in all traditions. Not my will, but thy will be done. Thy will be done. And so one of the ways I transitioned, Richard, out of just wanting to escape this world for the sake of Craig Holliday, for the salvation of Craig Holliday. I lived in a lot of pain when I was younger. Hell, I still live in a lot of pain because I have physical injuries and such. But when we live in pain, our ego drives us to want to escape pain. As you open your heart and surrender, you're less concerned about escaping pain. You're more concerned about serving God. Serving God. Serving the truth. Living in an awakened way. Living the truth, being the truth. And so if I see myself, for example, become overly harsh with my 5-year-old, and I'm mindful of this, part of serving the truth is having a gentle heart and realizing, oh, I'm being too harsh. I need to be kinder, gentler, more loving with my daughter. And I start to feel myself fall back into the divine flow again as I become more kinder and gentler with a 5-year-old who sometimes drives me a little crazy. And so, let me see if I got your question right. Craig, will you talk about your process, the seeker energy, how it fell away? Gradually, all at once, or both? Yeah, it was gradually, it was all at once. It was, I experienced it all. I seeked until I was exhausted. And like I said in the beginning, I meditated until I was exhausted. I went on retreats until I was fried. I served my teacher to a ridiculous degree, a degree that got to be unhealthy, where I just gave everything to him. I've spoken about that in the past, where I wouldn't feed myself. I'd just work 8 or 10 hours a day for him, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I just gave and gave and gave. And, when you give fully, oftentimes you become exhausted if you give fully from ego. But if you give fully while simultaneously opening your heart and allowing God's grace to flow through you, allowing the divine will to flow through you, what you find is something wakes up inside. An energy, 1,000 million times more powerful than the seeker. And it takes over your life. It takes over your life. And I can say now I give a hell of a lot more than I gave in the past. Even when I was becoming exhausted on the path through meditation and serving my teacher. But the difference now is that, I feel this flow of divine will flowing through me. So seeking energy dissolves into the energy of divine will. If we're surrendering, if we're letting go. If we're letting go. If we're not letting go, seeking energy will just exhaust us. And in fact, it'll leave us very frustrated because our ego is holding on that steering wheel too tight. But if we just ask, a different kind of question, so like, how do I wake up? How do I wake up? How do I wake up? How do I serve God this moment? You feel this great relaxation, great support. And we ask, how do I serve God this moment? How do I serve the truth? How could I be more honest, more open, more loving to myself? To myself. And going back to that question of worthiness or unworthiness, how could I love myself more fully? It's a much greater question than I once heard Adyashanti say that there was a space beyond worthiness and unworthiness. How do I get there? And no offense, to that question. I asked that question also when I heard Adya say that there's a space beyond worthiness and unworthiness. What I found a greater question for me at that moment was, do I love myself? Do I love the world? Do I love? Is there compassion in my heart? Or am I more addicted to having my way, having everything in order? Some people are addicted to like tidiness, having everything just exact and perfect. Are we addicted to that, or are we willing to be open and listen to the flow of God, the flow of your heart, A beautiful question, Richard. Okay. A tree, I see you wrote something there. It says, as a child, I loved, what is that word? Destatera. It fed my natural sense of oneness. It fed my belongingness here. It's a poem. Yeah, 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 that's beautiful. And that's, that's the willingness here. The willingness to open your heart and to listen. Listen to the truth as it speaks to you. Sometimes it's something as simple as a poem that opens us up. A couple of hours ago, I was at a little park, and I had 3 5-year-olds. They're all running around, and it was funny. They're being really competitive, kind of fighting with each other, and I was busy being super dad. But for a moment, I just looked up at the sky. My mind exploded open. I started to feel this hugeness of peace. And then I heard this screaming. My daughter came rushing to me, said her friend pushed her. And so I picked her up and allowed the hugeness of God's love to hold her, to embrace her. And see, this is what I'm inviting. Not for us just to have a spiritual awakening for our own sake, which is incredibly arrogant, but that this movement of spiritual awakening is truly for the benefit of this world, the benefit of this planet, the benefit of your family, or the benefit of your dog. Imagine how much kinder you would be to your dog, your cat, your neighbor, to yourself, when your heart is awake, when you're willing to look inside, to see your absolute goodness, along with your pain, your difficulty, your humanity. Back to that question in the beginning about, there's a lot of teachings out there that, talk about spiritual awakening being the end of growth. You can't outrun growth. You can't outrun evolution. Evolution is God, is life. There's always more we can do, more we can be, more we can develop, more we can realize. Any teaching that denies evolution is a very fundamentally flawed teaching. You're missing half the experience of God, of life. Now, some teachings do laser-like focus on one thing, and that's okay. But you have to remember, this is a teaching. The teaching is simply a strategy. If the teaching is divisive, it's not the full truth. If it's inclusive, it's closer to the full truth. The full truth. And we all want a teaching where we experience freedom and love and indestructibility, where the awakening has no beginning, no end. No beginning, no end. And so, let's see here. If anyone else has a question, feel free to type it in the chat. Just a couple of reminders. If any of you want to join us on Wednesday night, we have a very powerful meditation group that's been happening. And I encourage you to join us if you can. If you can. Also, I want to take this time just to thank everyone who's been supporting the Sangha with your donations, your support. It's truly been helpful. Truly been helpful. If anyone has any interest in doing any video editing, please get a hold of me. I'm needing some support with that. I have about 2 retreats behind on video stuff, and people keep asking me for it, and I just don't have the time, the hours in the day to get it all done. And so if anyone's highly skilled, Final Cut Pro or Adobe, just send me an email. Barbara asks, Craig, what time is the meditation group? It's the same time as tonight, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. So 9 p.m. East Coast and 6 p.m. Pacific Time. And then I'm not sure what time that is in Australia. It's probably pretty early. Anyways, I want to thank you all so much for sitting with me. And I invite you all just to close your eyes just for a moment here, to breathe deeply. And just to invite the intelligence of God, the intelligence of life, the divine will to come forward in your life, to live through you. Through you. And so I invite you just to notice this flow of peace, of light, of spaciousness and divinity. God, will you do this path for me? Will you love me from the inside out? Will you heal me? Bring me back to the realization of my wholeness. Will you give me the strength to share my gift, to share my heart, to share my love with this world? Will you give me the strength to come out of hiding and to come forward in love? Come forward in love. Have your way with me, Lord. Show me the highest and give me the strength to live this. To live this. And so nice to be here with you all this evening. I'll be back next week. May peace be with you all. Good night.